Hi, and welcome to my senior project presentation about humanizing homelessness. Going into my project, I wanted to achieve three things. The first was to help people experiencing homelessness, since I knew that this was a big issue, especially in Seattle, and I wanted to make my own impact on it. Second, since I've never experienced homelessness before, I knew I had a lot of misconceptions, and I wanted to break these misconceptions for myself. Finally, I wanted to tell others about what I learned and humanize homelessness in my community. Throughout my project, I've been working with Facing Homelessness, an organization that seeks to end homelessness. They have many programs like community cleanups and building small homes for homeless people to live in. I've been volunteering at the Window of Kindness, a place of physical connection in which volunteers hand out essential resources like food, drinks, clothes, and sleeping bags for free to any homeless people who come by. We also get to sit down, chat with them, and hear stories about their lives. At the beginning of my project, I conducted a survey about people's current perceptions of homelessness. I've quoted the results here. I noticed that the things that people associate with homelessness or homeless people are often qualities that are stigmatized by society, such as drug addiction or mental illness. Even aside from homelessness, these topics are linked to numerous negative associations, like fear and disgust. Very few positive connotations about homeless people were mentioned. Secondly, when asked what significant challenges are faced by homeless people, most responses focused on physical resources like food, housing, and financial stability. Not many considered the emotional or mental challenges that arise when living alone on the streets. Finally, it was nice to see a variety of associations with homelessness and causes of homelessness, ranging from personal flaws like laziness to uncontrollable circumstances like medical issues. Going into this project, I would have said the same things as many of these responses, and I still agree with most of them. However, I've learned that it's much harder to truly realize the vast extent to which uncontrollable circumstances play a part in becoming homeless. My senior project primarily focuses on breaking the stigma around homelessness and humanizing those who are experiencing it. In the next slides, I'm going to talk about common prejudices people have about homelessness and what the reality is. If we can realize the flaws in these prejudices and change our mindsets, we can move forward towards progress. The first common belief is that homeless people are homeless because they are lazy. The truth is that there are countless reasons that can cause homelessness, the vast majority of which aren't that they just didn't want to work. Take Strawberry, for instance. She ran away from home at the age of 14 to escape her mother, who was a drug addict. Then, on the streets, she was abused and sexually assaulted by a man who forced her to stay in her tent and prevented her from seeking help. Strawberry became homeless because of circumstances out of her control, which forced her life into instability. Most of the time, people become homeless due to unlucky circumstances, like unexpected layoffs, a traumatic experience, or medical issues. Another example is a homeless man I learned about who became homeless after an incident at the workplace. He was seriously injured and hospitalized, and because it happened at the workplace, his employer was supposed to pay his medical bills. However, for whatever reason, his employer did not do this, and thus the man had to pay for them himself. This meant that he had to pay both his medical bills and his rent for his apartment, which he simply could not financially support. Thus, he became homeless. Assuming that homelessness is self-inflicted and a result of laziness is extremely harmful and simply perpetuates the stigma around these people. Whether consciously or subconsciously, people often feel fearful of homeless people, thus making them unwilling to connect with or help them. However, while volunteering, I've seen for myself how kind, generous, and compassionate people experiencing homelessness are, in spite of their circumstances. Spider-Man is someone who I've had the pleasure of meeting and interacting with while volunteering at the window. He always asks me how I'm doing and never stops cracking jokes as everyone laughs along. Once, I was letting him try on a pair of shoes with a DC Comics design. I figured he'd keep them, but then he exclaimed excitedly that he was going to give them to one of his friends who would absolutely love the design. I was so touched by how he always naturally thought about others and wanted to make others happy. Another day, we had a few sleeping bags, which are in high demand. As I was handing out the last one to him, we overheard somebody else asking for a sleeping bag as well. Without even thinking, Spider-Man gave his away since he figured that the other person needed it more. I was so amazed by how, even when he had so little, he was more generous than many people who have much more. Finally, people commonly believe that everyone, no matter what circumstances they were born into, has a chance to succeed as long as they work hard. To believe this idea is to ignore the societal stigmas and systematic oppression that prevents marginalized groups from receiving a fair shot. For example, one day while volunteering, I sat down to speak to Relic, who has shown me the extent of which society holds underprivileged groups back. Since he is Native American, he was forced to attend schools that focused more on assimilating Native Americans into American society than actually providing them an education. Later in life, he was forced to choose between 8 years in prison and a military draft for a crime that he committed as a minor. After coming home from war, the government did nothing to help him regain a normal life and support himself financially. For his whole life, Relic has been held back by prejudice. So, how can you help? During my project, I've learned that action is the most important way to help the homeless. First, you can just say hello. This is Facing Homelessness's philosophy that forging connections between the community and people experiencing homelessness is an essential way to help. Often, what they seek most is a compassionate listening ear to remind them that they are heard and supported. Whether by signing up for a shift at the window of kindness or simply going out of your way to say hi on the streets, don't be afraid to say hello. As a volunteer, I met this amazing woman who was volunteering with me, who said that whenever she could, she would go up to a homeless person on the streets and ask them if they had heard about the weather the next day. This was both a great way to start a conversation with them, as well as to check in on if they were prepared for perhaps a big rainstorm or a blizzard. Second, you can volunteer. Organizations that help the homeless usually can't run without volunteers, who are integral to providing the help that allows programs to achieve their goals, like building homes or fundraising. Finally, you can get involved in advocacy. Although there are government group programs aimed to support the homeless, many are flawed and not as useful as they intend to be. An ironic example I learned about from a fellow volunteer was social services that required a home address to sign up for. Some laws are even created to make obstacles for the homeless, like funding the construction of spikes on grounds where homeless people may want to sleep. At the same time, there are numerous campaigns to improve the system that can bring powerful change to the lives of homeless people. Finally, I want to talk about my fundraiser that I organized during my project. After the stay-at-home order was announced and I could no longer volunteer, I directed my efforts towards raising money and collecting donations to benefit the window of kindness. During this time when resources are harder than ever to access, the homeless are hit worse than most of us. Thus, I advocated on Nextdoor, an app that allows you to communicate with your local neighborhood to send donations to Facing Homelessness. I also accepted Venmo donations, which will be used to buy Safeway gift cards that the Window of Kindness will pass out. This will allow homeless people to buy a warm meal as well as have a safe and warm place to stay or use the bathroom. I also picked up people's used supplies like sleeping bags, clothes, and blankets from their porches, which I will be donating to Facing Homelessness. In total, I've raised an estimated $1,355 of both money and resources. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Please click the link on this slide to go to the evaluation form and fill it out. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!